We started out with the concept, everything that we do is cyclical as writers, right? So it doesn't matter which path you're going on, you're going to start with, idea or conception, brainstorming. Then you go to the first draft process, then you edit, then you publish or pitch or whatever you're doing. And then you're back to the beginning again, right? So it's this cycle. And that's true of, so much of just our day-to-day activity. So that's kind of where the wheel came from. And then it did become this more extended metaphor. But that's where so it's okay, yeah, now if you're on this path to publication and you're on the road going, you've got, your whatever vehicle you're in, whether that's indie or traditional, you've got a path that you're following and you're going to come across obstacles. You're going to come across roadblocks. And the successful authors out there are the ones who find a way over, under, or around. Doesn't matter how you do it, but you have to get past that obstacle.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you. But navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 361 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with Greta Boris and Megan Haskell. Greta Boris is a USA Today Bestselling mystery and thriller author. Megan Haskell is an award-winning fantasy adventure author. Together, Greta and Megan founded The Author Wheel, publishers of books, courses, and a podcast to help writers overcome roadblocks and keep their stories rolling down the river. Sorry, I couldn't resist that. But we talk about their writing, we talk about the author wheel, and we talk about so much more, including our fondness for alliteration. And that's coming up later in this episode. But first, let's hear a word from this episode's sponsor.
Monitoring sales and advertising on multiple platforms takes away valuable writing time. ScribeCount gives you that time back by automatically collecting that data and displaying it in an easy-to-understand dashboard. What once took hours now takes minutes. ScribeCount, numbers from your words, built by indie authors for indie authors. Subscribe today, get back to writing, and leave the rest to us.
That's right, this episode is sponsored by ScribeCount. Now, I understand from my update that Randall Wood shared on the Wide for the Win Facebook group that ScribeCount 2 is coming in early June of 2024. And ScribeCount 2.0 is going to make it even easier for you to get the data that you need to make informed decisions as an indie author. And if you want to check out what the buzz is about with the existing ScribeCount and the forthcoming upgrades, go check them out over at scribecount.com. I want to thank the sponsor for helping sponsor the show, but also want to thank my patrons who also support and sponsor the show, and my patrons who support the show in two different ways over at patreon.com/starkreflections. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate that. You can check out how to sponsor or support on a monthly basis for $1, $3, or $5 a month. Or if you're so inclined, there's also a link to buy me a coffee, and I want to thank my coffee buddies who supported this podcast. Seriously, guys, the support that I get through patrons and the coffee buyers is awesome, and I love you guys so much. I really appreciate that support. Of course, you can also support the podcast just by listening. Yes, just by listening, you are supporting the podcast. So thank you, all my listeners, because you're awesome, and I love you. And of course, you can leave a review over on the podcatcher of your choice. Or, I do like when you share the podcast with someone else. Someone say, hey, this great interview with Megan and Greta is so fun. You really should listen to that. That's another way that you can help the podcast. Sharing is caring, after all. Okay, play bumper and a little bit more chatter. Okay, I am going to take a really short one on my personal update. Still making some progress on the One Hand Screaming 20 Haunting Years, planning out the Kickstarter and the content, and I discovered something really awesome. I'll talk about that in the reflections at the end. I'm going to skip the comments for this particular episode. And I'll be honest, one of the reasons I'm cutting this so short is it is close to the end of the day, and Liz walked into work today. It's a gorgeous day, and in the interest of my health and being able to fit into my tux when I get married in July, I'm walking to meet her halfway. Between work. We did it yesterday. It was a beautiful day, and I didn't have anything scheduled towards the end of the day, so it was fantastic. I got to listen to an awesome audiobook. I'm listening to Todd Fonstock's Falling to Fly. Oh my God, absolutely amazing. Todd will be coming up in a very near future episode where we talk about that book and so many other great things. It's a phenomenal book for writers. But anyway, so yeah, I'm cutting it all short because Liz is going to text me at any point, and I'd love to be able to get the podcast, at least this part of the podcast, work done. I probably have another hour of finishing the production and all the other stuff that I do. But aren't you lucky that I don't babble on as long at the beginning, and you can get right to the awesome interview and the conversation that I had with Greta and Megan. And as I'm digging into the archives, I know I have to do something because I chatted with them in February. We had such a grand time. Now, the benefit to me is I got to re-enjoy this conversation almost as if it was new. It was like, hey, I was there. I remember that. I do remember a lot of the things we talked about, but I mean, it's so sad that I get to enjoy this twice over, in a 6-month period, and you only get to enjoy it once. Well, you can re-listen to it, just like I did. You can re-listen to the podcast. But without further ado, let's roll the bumper and get into this wonderful conversation that I had with Greta and Megan as the big author wheel keeps on turning and proud authors keep on burning. I just have to play with that. You know me so well. I couldn't resist myself. Greta, Megan, I'm sorry. I love play on words. Anyways, on to the interview. Greta, Megan, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Thank you so much for having us. It's exciting to be here.
Yes, thank you. I have been a long-time listener, first-time visitor.
First-time visitor. That's awesome. Well, I'm so glad you guys agreed to come on the podcast, and thank you so much. Before we get into the author wheel and the collaborations that you guys do, I thought it'd be really fun to dig into your individual superhero Avenger stories, before you assembled. As writing Avengers. Yes.
Yes.
All right. I think, you can start, either one of you can start first. But just like, why did you get into writing? Where did it all start for you? And then how did you gravitate to the specific genres that you write in?
All right. I guess I'll go first because Greta's looking at me like I should go first. Okay. All right. So for me, I actually started writing as a creative outlet when I was working for one of the big accounting firms. And so I was behind spreadsheets and numbers all day long.
Okay.
And I've always had like that creative, artistic side of my personality as well. So I realized I was reading about, I don't know, like 5 books a week at that time. And I was like, I need to slow myself down and I need a creative outlet because this was pre like Kindle Unlimited and stuff. So it was a lot. Anyhow, so I decided to give myself a shot at writing. And so it started as a commute activity, really, where I would take the train from Long Beach into downtown LA every day. And so I would write on the train. I had this little tiny laptop. I mean, it could hardly be called a laptop, to be honest. But it was tiny. And so, I just started writing there. I started actually with a book review blog, which is no longer in existence.
Okay.
And then I had an urban organic gardening blog, which also no longer exists.
So
and
this
then
is before you started writing fiction, you were doing these things, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I eventually started fiction. And so let's see. I got pregnant in or had my daughter in 2012, quit my day job,
Okay.
but kept writing. And it was the thing that just kind of gave me that sense of self, gave me that artistic creative outlet, and gave me a sense of purpose. And so I would write in the bits of time, when she was asleep and napping, or whenever I could, keep my eyelids open at the time. And then a few years later, actually about 3 weeks before I had my second daughter, I published that first book. So that was my kind of origin story.
Okay. And I have to ask, because you write fantasy. So
Yes.
were you reading 5 fantasy novels a week? Because they're not small, right?
Well, so no. Yes, I was reading fantasy. No, they're not small, but I have a tendency, I prefer my reading genre is more on the action adventure fantasy side rather than on the epic fantasy side. So I was not reading like the 600-page door stoppers. I was reading, more your standard 300 to 400 page, action adventure fantasy novels. And I've always gravitated toward the female protagonist fantasy. So Anne McCaffrey, Dragon Riders of Pern is one of my inspirational series. I read a lot of Laurel K. Hamilton back in the day. I read a lot of Anne Rice back in the day. So all these female authors who wrote female protagonists were kind of more my genre of choice, subgenre of choice.
And that's one that you thought, okay, I want to do this myself.
Yeah,
I want to entertain other people who are stuck in an accounting spreadsheet job, so they can enjoy. Okay.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so, Greta, what about you? Where did the origins for writing come for you?
So I come from a magazine background. My dad was a editor and a publisher with some of the larger magazines back in the day when there were larger magazines.
Okay.
So pre-children, I worked as a production manager for a couple of national books, and then also in advertising and marketing. And then when my kids started getting older and I started thinking, now what am I going to do with myself? It was sort of a natural to go back. So I did write for a number of magazines. And I wrote everything from like articles on Victorian homes to Zombies magazine. I was the Walking Dead girl for Zombies magazine. Zombies magazine is no longer in existence because Walking Dead has fallen out of popularity, but it's another topic. Anyway, so I interviewed a couple of fiction authors, and I've always been an avid fiction reader. I love reading. And so I interviewed a couple of fiction authors for magazine articles. One is a friend of mine today. And the other one, believe it or not, she only granted me an online interview. I didn't actually get to talk to her, but was Joanna Penn back in the day. And I thought, well, shoot, if these guys can do it, why can't I do it? Well, you know what? Fiction's a whole lot harder than I thought, But I did decide I was going to give it a whirl and started writing short stories and novellas. And eventually I wrote one really horrible thriller that I pitched a little bit, just enough to realize how horrible it was. And then, and then eventually wrote the first book in what became my 7 Deadly Sins series and pitched that to a small press and got a deal. So that was
the start. So you were doing a lot of short articles for magazines before you went into fiction. Was it short thriller and mystery? Or was it the same genre that you were writing in short fiction when you started before you did the novel?
So I was writing short, and then the stories kept getting longer and longer because I would get more ideas and want to flesh it out. But I was so conditioned to write short that in the beginning I was writing short stories, and I did pitch some short stories as well and got some nibbles, but I don't remember if I ever got paid for short stories or not, honestly. I have short stories in anthologies.
Right.
Whether they paid me or not, I can't remember. if they did, it wasn't significant money. So
Right.
I don't
It
remember.
rarely is. Yeah, it rarely is
Yeah.
for short fiction. Even 8 cents a word, for a 5,000 word story is not gonna, not gonna necessarily pay the mortgage. So it was Seven Deadly
No.
Sins. That was a publisher? Was it an editor you met, or was
Yes.
it a cold call, like with the slush pile and all that?
So this is a funny story. I actually got my publisher doing a Twitter pitch.
Whoa. It was
I
like one
know.
of those scheduled Twitter pitch sessions.
Yeah. So
Wow.
what
Okay.
happened? What happened? I had been in a couple of Twitter pitches and hadn't gotten very far. And then the first book in that series, by the way, just as a post note, I just negotiated a new contract with my publisher, and we are relaunching that series with a new theme and a new titles and everything. I'm really excited about. But back to how I got the deal. So the first book has the main character is a real estate agent. And so in one of, when you do a Twitter pitch, you come up with your little, it's really good for writing log lines, learning to write log lines, because you can do like 4 or 5 different ones and you can see the ones that get the love,
Right.
So I did one that mentioned that she was a real estate agent. And then all these real estate agents were liking my Twitter pitch. And so it looked like it was really popular. That has got to be the only reason I can think of that. Then I got likes and stuff from several agents and acquisition editors. So I ended up sending out 5 or 6 queries from that one Twitter pitch.
Wow.
And the first one to come back with a contract that seemed reasonable to me and good to me was the publisher that I ended up publishing with. That's Fox Press there in Texas.
Wow.
So Greta, I'm going to ask you a question now. I'm interrupting Mark, but do you remember what your log line was? I'm testing you.
That is a good question. It was something like Gwen Bishop, a local real estate agent, was afraid she was like, it was something about suburban, like nobody knew. Oh God, I had a great word. It was some word about,
I thought it was something like
suburban obscurity.
I thought it was something in Bodies in the Basement.
Oh yeah, that was the one that actually got the love, right? There was a one about, there was a treasure, there was a body in the bedroom and a secret in the basement, or like something hidden in the basement. That was the one that got it. Yeah, the suburban obscurity was the one I loved, and it didn't get much love. So anyway, there you go. You never know what's going to attract people. So.
That is true. And it's so funny. I mean, it's sort of leading into what we're going to talk about with the way you two collaborate. But I love that Megan just jumped in. It's like, I want the answer to this question, because this is going to be good content and people are going to like it. And that's I love that. So let's start talking about the two of you collaborating. And I think you collaborate really brilliantly. But did you meet when you were already published authors? Did you meet prior to that? How did you guys connect in the first place?
Megan, he wants to know our meet cute.
Our meet cute.
Yes.
Aww.
Well, and there's a funny story, cute. Right? There's a funny story. It's a rom-com. Okay.
It is.
It
is. So we both went to the Southern California Writers Conference back in, it had to have been 2014, because I was pregnant and hadn't yet published. So there's my timeline. And so we both had manuscripts that were ready to pitch. I was there to get editor feedback, to see if it was really, like, it's funny, because I worked in corporate America for so long, I never really called myself a writer until I went to this conference. I know it's strange, but this was my mental headspace. It was like almost
blogging. You were already a writer. Okay.
Yeah, I was. But at the time, it was not something I admitted to. Like, it was almost, I don't want to say it was taboo, but like you'd get like side eye from your colleagues, like, oh, you're writing? Why are you doing that? It's like, oh, we're accountants. Like, we don't writing. What? It was just weird. So anyway, so we went.
Unless it's numbers.
Yeah. Lots of numbers, lots of spreadsheets. Greta still gets mad at me. Anyhow. So we were both at this conference. I knew I wanted to go indie because I had a business background. I like numbers. I've always wanted to run my own business. So I was there just to see if that book was good enough. I didn't have anybody else out there, any community yet, to tell me whether or not it was really quality. It's like, yeah, you can ask your friends and family, but meh, right? They just love you. So they're going to tell you it's good anyway. Greta was there to find an agent or editor and pitch her series, or her first book in that series. And so we met and we became friends. And then we joined this local writers community called OC Writers, and we started networking through that. And then another year or two later, we actually took over that group for a while and started running it ourselves. And then from there, it kind of turned into, well, we wanted to go back to that conference and we wanted to not have to pay for it.
Okay. All right.
We're essentially cheap. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And so we're like, okay, we should pitch a course, because Greta was traditional and I was indie. And this is a conference that was targeted more at very beginner writers. And so we thought, well, we have this very unique perspective where we can share both sides. Like, we're agnostic. No one is right. No one is better. It's just what works for you.
Right.
And so our very first course, we called it Choose Your Own Adventure, which was problematic.
Yeah, because everybody thought we were going to teach them how to write a choose your own adventure book.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, we went through a few different iterations of titles on that course.
Choose your own personal writing adventure or something like that.
Now the course is called Self-Publish or Get an Agent. It's very direct.
Like, which one is right for you?
Yeah. Like,
yeah. So that course, it is still in existence. We've revised it several times over. It became a book, but that was our first course teaching.
What's the name of the book? What was the name?
Publish, take charge of your author career. So
there you
publish.
go. And it's still available.
It is still available. Absolutely.
On our website, among other places.
Yeah.
Cool. So just for there'll be links in the show notes, of course, including a link to the book on your website as well. Yes. Because, hey, there may be people who prefer to learn by reading the book.
Exactly.
And we have an online course too. That's called Self-Publish or Get an Agent. So you can do
choices.
It's choices. Exactly.
Yeah. It's like a choose your own adventure.
Exactly. Hey, we should make a course on that.
And maybe turn it into a book and evolve over the years. Okay. So, so that was the first collaboration, was wanting to go back to the conference and yeah, that's a great way of, it's like, hey, I'm going to bring value to the conference. Therefore I can be there. So it worked, obviously. You got in, you did the course, you've started to collaborate. How did that eventually evolve into the author wheel?
So do you want to take this one?
Sure. So about a year before COVID, Megan had been, we were running this local writing community thing, and you know how a prophet is least respected in his own hometown. Anytime we tried to charge for anything, no, that was just wrong. We couldn't. We were not allowed. We were supposed to do everything for free. Love you guys if you're listening to this podcast episode. However, we hit a wall where it was like, "Guy, we're doing a lot of work and we're not making any money from it. We're just doing a lot of work." We would teach for other organizations or other conferences, and we would get paid for that. And so we were like, well, maybe we need to turn this organization over to somebody else, give somebody else a chance, and start a real business, which is what we did. And then about a year, maybe not even a whole year before COVID, but
we came up with the concept of the author wheel, I think, like in the summer or fall of 2018, I think is when we came up with the concept. But it took us, several months to actually get it launched. So it didn't actually launch until like basically COVID had just started.
And it was just, but it
was online, right? It was online. So that worked out nicely.
This was our move from the in-person teaching, which we'd been doing at this point for a few years. And, the conferences, as Greta said, the local writing organizations, the library, places like that. So we'd been teaching live and in person, but this was our moment to try to make a business that we could actually move online and scale, essentially.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we would still teach in person as well, but and it was brilliant because Megan, and I'm going to give you credit, Megan. So listen up because I don't always do it.
We're recording. This is great. We've got this on tape.
Because Megan was after me for so long. We need to turn our courses into online courses. And years ago, I had tried to do something like that. And I'm not very techie. And we didn't have the tools either. Anyway, it was such a pain in the butt. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. No. And she's like, no, we can. So eventually she talked me into it and we did it. And it was brilliant because we started doing it before COVID. So when COVID hit, everything would have been shut down, but we were already in a position to kind of move in that direction. So Megan, it was a brilliant decision and I'm glad you talked me into it.
We are very good at that. We talk each other into things.
Yeah.
I love that. So, just a few things about the author wheels. Like you've got 25 years of experience between the two of you, different perspectives and experiences within the publishing industry, but then also, so, you help writers overcome roadblocks was one of the things. And I have to ask, because this play on words seems to be right up in your wheelhouse, but do you help them roll over the roadblocks? Like the author wheel helps them roll over
Yeah, we like to run things over and just completely obliterate them as much
bulldoze.
as bulldoze. That's bulldoze, really the better term.
So where did that come from then? Like the term author wheel?
So we started out with the concept, everything that we do is cyclical as writers, right? So it doesn't matter which path you're going on, you're going to start with, idea or conception, brainstorming, then you go to the first draft process, then you edit, then you publish or pitch or whatever you're doing. And then you're back to the beginning again, right? So it's this cycle. And that's true of so much of just our day-to-day activity. So that's kind of where the wheel came from. And then it did become this more extended metaphor. We're also probably too clever for our own good sometimes. We go a little deep in the metaphors. But that's where so it's like, okay, now if you're on this path to publication and you're on the road going, you've got, your whatever vehicle you're in, whether that's indie or traditional, you've got a path that you're following and you're going to come across obstacles. You're going to come across roadblocks. And the successful authors out there are the ones who find a way over, under, or around. It doesn't matter how you do it, but you have to get past that obstacle. And a lot of times it's just, let's be real. It's beating your head against the wall because you're too stubborn to quit. That's true for me. But it's also finding those coping strategies, breaking things down into smaller bits. We have all these tools and techniques that we talk about and teach for finding what works for you as an author that's going to keep your story rolling.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sure you must have played with the nose to the grindstone because that is a wheel, right? There you go. So.
Oh, I didn't even think of that one. That's a good one. We have to have a whole episode on nose to the grindstone now. I like that.
There we go.
Well, I mean, you get the whole, like an episode of just the different analogies we can creatively come, because I think that teaches writers a really important exercise. And maybe, Greta, this goes back to the Twitter being a really great way of coming up with back in the early days of Twitter, when there was a Twitter before it got
really
blown out of the water, like Planet of the Apes.
No.
You blew it up. Anyways, I digress. But that was when it was 140 characters, when you were very limited, right? So just the whole concept of forcing that creativity into a specific channel can really help open a writer's mind up, can it?
Oh, 100%. And I am honestly really grateful for all the magazine writing that I did, which wasn't exhaustive and it wasn't like I had this huge career, but I did enough of it that it's like you get told you have X number of words and you're only going to get paid 10 cents a word.
Right.
So if you write a whole bunch of extra words, like you're just going to have to spend more time cutting them. And so that learning to be a little more succinct and a little spare and thinking about not only uh, what I want to say, but the way to say it as quickly as possible and as succinctly as possible, which I'm obviously not doing as I'm answering your question but when I write, I do it way better. I'm just tell you
Well,
that.
but I'm also paying you by the word here. So
Okay.
that,
Whoa.
So the more words we say, the better.
the
I gotta
better.
talk a lot. Yeah. Yeah. But I definitely think that is good. And that, I mean, I really do. My husband is teasing me all the time because I am like the analogy queen. I love analogies and metaphors and I will beat them to death. So, you know,
That's really important. That's really
yeah.
important. Okay, so looking at the author wheel and understanding just a little bit about what the author wheel is. So what sort of authors would consider it? And is it at different points on that wheel that they can just jump in, or do they have to be at a specific spot in order to get into the groove?
So we generally, like, our target audience, quite honestly, are the newer writers. So either just starting out, just trying to figure out what they're doing, still don't know which path to publication they want to go, or those that are transitioning
Right.
from one path to another, one new skill to another. But the reality is that anybody can find, we try to break things down. Let me restate that. We try to break things down into the smallest, easiest to digest pieces possible. So we've written what we call quick guides, very short, actionable books on specific topics. So if you're having trouble, with productivity, we have the quick guide to, oh shoot, now I can't remember the actual title. Quick guide to writing productivity. No, it's quick guide to
The author wheel quick guide. Yeah, I think it is to productive writing habits.
To productive writing habits. There it is.
Okay.
So the author wheel quick guide to productive writing habits. And we give you the best tools, tips, and techniques that we've learned between the two of us to help speed up your writing, make it a consistent habit, all of those best practices. So we have these little quick guides. We have, the podcast also, where we interview people to learn from them what we don't know ourselves, or to get a new perspective on things. So I think anybody who's struggling with a topic is probably going to be able to find something that we offer that will help them. And if they can't yet, they will in the future, because we're always coming up with new ideas and new topics and new courses and all of that. So yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, if you're feeling stuck, our goal is to help you get through that, to find inspiration, to find motivation, to break things down into those small pieces so that it's not overwhelming, so that you can move forward.
And I'm just going to jump on that one and say that I think what kind of makes Megan and I a little bit unique, because there are a lot of people in this space who are brilliant, like you, Mark, who are helping authors. And some of them have longer in the industry perhaps than we do, or maybe they, are bestsellers, or, well, we're both bestsellers, but, like really, really big bestsellers or what have you. But I think what kind of makes us unique is that we are so different, so that when we do give you guys ideas and tips, we're coming at it from very different perspectives, so that hopefully we can hit a whole lot of people's different ways of thinking and doing. Because so I'm not a plotter, but more of a plotter than Megan. She's more of a pantser than me. We're obviously in different age groups and different stages of our life, which means we have different kinds of distractions that we have to deal with.
Right.
And those kinds of things. So when we talk about productivity or habits, it's like, well, no, I don't have to stop and pick up my kids from school, but I have a grandson. And if he even just smiles at me, I'm done for the day, So we all have different places in life. So all of that, I feel like it can be helpful to people to hear that. No, because I think too often in this industry, we see one really successful person, whoever that is, and we decide to become a baby duckling and just follow after them and do everything that they do. And rarely does that work,
Oh,
Yeah,
I mean,
one of our big talking points, especially lately, is that, I mean, it's our tagline. There is no single right way to write, publish, or promote your book. Only what works for you.
It's actually
correct way.
produce,
Produce,
publish.
publish, and promote.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
up the three
Fine.
Ps.
I got it wrong. Jeez.
Is that one of the quick guides?
So we did actually originally break everything down into produce, publish, promote because we liked the alliteration. So anyway, but
I'm
yes,
a
there's
big
no
fan of
single.
alliteration.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. But yeah, there is no single right way to do this job. So you have to find what's right for you. And I think historically, we've been in this position where we see those big, huge, successful authors, the ones that are, 6-7 figures, that are on all the bestseller lists, that are just doing so incredibly well. And we go, well, I'm going to do exactly what they do. And then I'm going to be just as successful. And the truth of the matter is, there are different circumstances, there are different lifestyles, there are different goals, there are different motivations. All these things impact what you can do, what you want to do, what success actually means to you, because it might not be as much financial as you think it is. And I think that's kind of where this industry is moving. Nowadays, there's so many options. There are so many different ways of getting your book out there, whether that's wide versus, KU versus traditional versus, all the different media. So audiobooks versus ebooks versus paperbacks, Kickstarter, hard special edition hardcovers, direct sales there's so much. And so you have to really kind of analyze yourself to figure out what that looks like. And I think the benefit that Greta and I have is we have been around a while. We do have different experiences, and we talk to a lot of other authors who have even more experiences. So we have that kind of broader perspective that isn't always obvious.
No, I appreciate what you're saying as well. I mean, looking at the stats, you can see 1,000 authors follow the big name author who's got a thing that worked for them, and they can all do perfectly, execute everything flawlessly with a great cover and great sales copy and great log line and wonderful editing, and everything's cover designs on par. Everything's solid. But the one thing that nobody can control is, like you said, time, circumstance, luck. Publishing, doing the exact same thing 3 months earlier or 3 months later might have made a difference, and we can't control that. But
Right.
we can control various other factors. And I love that you guys are not trying to pigeonhole people and say, I got to do it this way or the highway, right? That's not one of your quick start guides are not my way or the highway. That's not one of them. Right.
That is definitely not one of them.
Yeah.
No.
But highway, you got to remember, you got to have something with a highway in there, because wheels, right?
Right. Well, we do definitely have roads and forks in the roads.
Journeys. We're big on journeys and forging paths.
Yeah.
We do have a fiction plot map.
That's perfect.
All kinds of things.
Well, I want to ask then about, so there's a course you have coming up. It's called Trope Stacking and Other Genre Magic. Ooh, this sounds fun. It'll probably be live by the time this podcast airs, but tell us a little bit about this course that you're launching.
Sure.
So
go for it, Greta.
Okay, I'll start. You fill in everything I miss, because I will miss things. So the course is actually a companion course to a book we wrote, a quick guide. And the quick guide is called Understanding Your Genre, How to Write What Readers Love. And so then this course kind of picks up on a lot of those concepts that we have in the quick guide. And then we do a little bit more hands-on demonstration of some of our tools and techniques. And we also add more things in the course that are not in the book. So essentially what we realized this, I realized this early on, that I thought that I understood what genre was. And then I went and pitched a book to an agent, and I called it cozy horror. So apparently that is not actually a genre, but I thought it was.
It wasn't
clever.
At the time. I think it is now, but it
You
wasn't
could-
at the
You could
time.
have been the pioneer that defined the genre, right?
I know I could have, except for this agent did not think it was clever or smart or anything else. She just kind of was like, you need to know what you're doing. So I spent a lot of time going to the library or going on Amazon and getting all the books that I thought what I was writing. I had also gotten, when I was pitching, you start getting feedback, and I was getting feedback from editors that were like, well, this kind of reads literary, but it's got a strong romance, but it's also parts of it seem like a thriller. What the heck is this?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I thought it was obvious that it was cozy horror. No, a thriller. But so anyway, so I started doing a whole lot of research, and I would just get all these books and lay them all out and see what the commonalities, these were the best-selling thrillers of the year, the award winners, whatever, what were the commonalities? And so when we did write Understanding Your Genre, we kind of jumped off on that idea because Megan had done her own version of that in understanding her genre. And so I just think that when we were reading early submissions at conferences that we would teach at, we would see that it's like, yes, this person has kind of an idea what they're trying to do, but it's sort of a mishmash. So we're trying to help people analyze their particular genre, which that's why it's a quick guide. It's not, we did get one bad review on Amazon. I think it was 3 stars because she was like, well, I should have read quick guide. I guess that's my fault. This was really short. I'm like, well, yeah, it's
You answered yourself.
I mean, it was in the title.
You didn't call it an extensive guide. It's a quick guide. So obviously
right.
It's going to be shorter, right?
So we don't lay out like, here are the rules for every single genre. It's more about how to dive in and discover for yourself your genre, your subgenre, and drill down. Mm-hmm. And then the other concept in the course, particularly the trope stacking, is that nobody wants just one straight formulaic genre anymore. That is not going to satisfy readers. They want something familiar, but with a twist. So how do you do that? How do you take tropes from other genres and layer them in a way that's going to not confuse people?
Going back to our analogies that we love so much. So we use the analogy of a kitchen remodel. Right. So when you're setting up your kitchen, if you go in and you just let the contractor do whatever they want to do because they're the creative, whatever, they could come in with farmhouse cabinets and stainless steel countertops and, Art Deco light fixtures and who knows what. So those things obviously don't go together very well. So what you want to do with genre is the same thing you want to do with a kitchen. You want to have it be unique and uniquely you, but all work together to create a harmonious whole so that you get the cabinets. Maybe you like the farmhouse cabinets. Well, then you're going to choose a, granite counter or, whatever, right? So you're going to find the right tropes to layer in to create your perfect kitchen.
So it's complementary. It's not, garish or something.
Right. They don't clash.
Or with no plan at all.
Yeah.
Which is how a lot of first books go.
Let's go back to planning again, because I was really surprised. I was really shocked to hear Greta said, well, Megan's more of a pantser than I am. And I went, but what about all your years of spreadsheeting and stuff like that?
I love spreadsheets.
Yeah, but wouldn't that naturally mean that you'd be more inclined to planning everything out?
You'd think so. You would think so. No, I think so. I've had this. In fact, one of my newsletter clarified. I have a Substack article. One of my early articles was on my strange brain, and I called it something better than that. But it was really my strange brain, because I have 2 halves to myself. I have the businessy, organized number spreadsheet person, and I have the creative, artistic, just wants to explore person. And so what I found was that when I first started writing was that creative side of myself. It was that outlet. So I needed to just relax all those rules. So I never wrote to an outline. When I tried, it actually stifled me. And I felt like, well, I already know the story. Why would I bother writing it? Like, that was my attitude. Like, it's not exploratory. It's not artistic anymore for me. And I know this is not true. Like, I'm not, for outliners out there, they are just as much artistic, but this was my own personality, my own struggle. If I wrote that outline, I either wouldn't stick to it at all, or I would just stop writing that book, period. So for me, that creative side has to be the freedom to explore the story. And when I'm writing, I actually I imagine I'm sitting inside the character. I am the character. So I can only react to the experiences as they're happening to that character. And if I try to outline and force a path for the character, it never feels right. So no, I don't. I have usually a couple plot points, like for just story structure pieces. Like I have a theme or a lesson I want the character to learn over the course. And I've got the premise as far as like, the types of magic I use in the fantasy or the types of creatures that are going to be there or that kind of thing. But when it comes to the actual like crafting of the plot and writing it out, I have to start from page 1 and be that character and just go for it.
So you have the difference in the way that you write and work on your fiction together.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, when you collaborate for the writing wheel, for deciding what quick guides or maybe in the future comprehensive guides for those 3 stars who didn't pay attention, they were in the back of the class not paying attention.
Yes.
or even for the courses you plan as well as the podcast, because you have all these moving parts. You have 4 wheels in motion at all times, or multiple wheels on a transport, all having to turn and guide you in some sort of directions rather than scattershot. How do you guys collaborate in that way in terms of that co-branding that you do together?
We argue a lot.
Yeah. I'm taking the wheel.
Actually, you're not too far off with that one.
Okay.
Usually one of us is kind of the leader on a specific project or a specific part of a project.
Okay. All right.
And then the other one contributes. We actually, our very, very first book, we traded chapters. So each of us would write a chapter and then the other would be the editor and go in and edit. That sort of changed over time as we, kind of merged into one person, let's be honest.
A hive mind. Yeah, we have
a bit of a hive mind. We understand each other's voice now. So it's a little bit easier just to be like, well, I'm going to write this section and then you can edit it. And then, it kind of merges a little bit better. But definitely like with the podcast, I'm the one that records and we hire an editor, but I'm the one that uploads and does all that. And then Greta takes on most of the social media, marketing kind of stuff and a lot of the guest interactions or emails as we process that. So we kind of just share the load where we can and delegate where we can and kind of pick which skills are needed and best for each person and just talk a lot. We talk a lot.
Yeah, we do. Megan's a lot more techie than me. So if it's going to be something like fixing something on the computer or like when we moved our website, like I did do bits and pieces of it and then she just goes in and changes it all. So it's like, well, why don't you just do it then? Like, what are those things?
Greta gets mad at me because I'm very type A about formatting.
Yeah. Well, but then, I'm with the books, especially the quick guides and those guys, I do tend to be kind of like the primary editor.
Right.
I think just because I was an editor for magazines and I don't know, it just works with my brain. So I'll take bits that Megan has written and then I'll make them so it's a more homogenous voice and then just figure out how everything fits together and that kind of thing. So I
learned very quickly that I can't take offense to anything. Greta just changes it and it's all good. And we work really, really well that way.
Yeah.
So there's no nothing is sacred when it comes to what we produce. It's a full collaboration. Now, this is probably why I can't do this on my fiction though. I don't think, I haven't been, approached or had the opportunity, but I don't think I could co-write fiction because I do have to exist in that character. And I would get upset if somebody just went in and changed everything I'd written. But with the nonfiction stuff, it's less personal maybe. And so it's easier to be like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure. That sounds better.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, I think it kind of goes back to the fact too, that we both have different perspectives in so many ways and about so many things, so that, if Megan is writing something and she wants me to read it, it's like, it's really helpful because if I don't quite get what she's aiming at and I know her really well, and I know her voice really well, then obviously that's something that needs to be discussed, because if I don't get it, nobody else is going to get it either, and vice versa. That if I'm presenting something and she's like, well, I don't get what you're saying, then we know, so we can help each other out that way quite a bit. And that's because the ultimate goal with the nonfiction isn't creativity or self-expression or all the things that your fiction is. The ultimate goal with the nonfiction is to help people. And so we want to be as helpful as possible. And I guess that's where we're constantly kind of checking each other, is this idea, this new idea that I have for a book or a product or a podcast episode, or because we do these between episodes. So we have on Mondays on the podcast, we have interviews with people like yourself who are very smart, and we just get all like fangirly and weird. And then Thursdays, we have a quick tip. And each month we kind of have a different topic. The topic for the month this month is that we're recording this February is kind of motivation and falling back in love with your writing, because it was Valentine's Day. But each month we'll have a different topic, and we'll have like quick tip episodes. Right. And so that's where we do a lot of hashing out, like, is this going to be helpful for people? And it's not personal. We're not going to get our feelings hurt if the other person doesn't think so. We're just going to hash it out until we come up with something that we really do believe is going to be helpful.
Love that. I love that you have various lengths of content in both, books, courses, podcast as well. Maybe there'll be a review for the podcast saying, wow, this was a good episode, but it was too short. Not like the one on Monday. It was longer.
It was longer. Yeah. The interviews definitely go longer.
Yeah.
All right. So can you please let my listeners know where they can find the Writer Wheel? Everything having to do with the author wheel. My apologies. I wanted to go alliteration on you, all alliteration, but it is the author wheel. Where can people find the author wheel and all the various goodies that you have?
So our website is authorwheel.com. So pretty simple, pretty easy. Right. And from there, we actually, if you land on the homepage, you will see a link to sign up for our free 7 Days to Clarity course, which walks you through how to kind of do your own little self-assessment on your goals, motivations, drivers, etc., and then ultimately create an author mission statement and tagline. And we do that all in 7 days. It's amazing.
Wow, that's
and amazing. It's free.
And
or you can just go into the website. That also is good too.
How about your author website? Where can where can my listeners find you as authors?
So as for my fiction, I'm meganhaskell.com, MEGAN. I have the correct spelling of my name. Thank you. There are no random extraneous letters. So meganhaskell.com. And then I also have my Clarify, Simplify, Implement newsletter on Substack, which is meganhaskell.substack.com, or meganhaskellauthor.substack.com. Excuse me.
Yeah. And I'm at Greta, 1T, no extraneous T's, 1T, gretaboris.com. And I don't know if I mentioned, maybe I did, that I write mysteries and thrillers. And so I have a mortician mystery series that's a little more humorous, the lighter side of death. And then the almost true crime series will be the relaunch of what used to be the 7 Deadly Sins, coming soon. So awesome. If they're mystery thriller readers, they can check me out there.
Awesome. And there will be links to all of those URLs in the show notes at starkreflections.ca. And there are no extraneous letters in starkreflections.ca. And there will not be extraneous letters in any of those URLs. So thank you, ladies, so much for a great time.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, so two things I want to reflect on. Well, there's multiple things I want to reflect on. First, I absolutely love what they do with the wheel, the author wheel, and the metaphors. I think they're solid. They're bang on. I am in awe of these women and what they've done. I'm in awe of the way that they've created content in multiple formats and guises, and it kind of goes back to sort of part of their DNA And it's they're wanting to make sure authors understand this, and I say this a lot, and I think it's so critical that they're doing this, and so important to remind you that there's no single right way to do your job as an author. You have to find what's right for you, and that is hard. That means there's extra work. No one's going to hand you, there's no silver bullet. No one's going to hand you a simple solution that you just have to follow a blueprint. You're a creative, you're a storyteller. You're going to have to take these details and readapt them into something that works for you. And yes, it's extra work, but it's definitely worth doing the extra work. And I so admire Greta and Megan for doing it. And they mentioned this several times. There's no single right way to do this. And so the content they create is a reflection of that. There are some people who are going to enjoy their podcast. There are some people who are going to enjoy their longer books. Their quick start guides are going to be people who prefer to take the courses or do consulting with them. So again, they're providing multiple ways for different types of learners, because again, we all have to do it our own way. So that's the first thing I want to reflect on, and I really admire that. The other thing is Greta's Twitter pitch log lines and 140 characters. And it's so funny that this morning, and this is on the 23rd of May, 2024, as I was, editing the interview and listening to that, is this morning during the workday writing session, I was working on one hand screaming, and I was putting together the short bits that are going to be in that collection. And I remembered, oh yeah, in 2009, 2010, I had the most money per word ever in doing, so this goes back to Greta's Twitter pitch log lines being 140 characters. And it reminded me that I actually sold 2 short stories to a Twitter horror magazine back in 2009, 2010. And the Twitter magazine was Tweet to Meet, so it's at Tweet to Meet. And the stories were limited to 140 characters, and they would prompt for a theme. And so the value for me as a writer in trying to come up with a story was trying to express that in a really, really short form. It goes back to that old, allegedly Hemingway story. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. Tells a story right there. And so that, funny that I was listening to that this morning, because this morning I went in and I looked, I probably wrote about 20 or 30 of those 140 character or less stories. But again, think about that. So, professional pay per word back in the day was 5 cents US per word for short fiction. 8 cents, I think, is the going professional rate right now. But I was thinking, wow, for the one of the stories, which was maybe 20 words or something, I got $1. That was like the most I made for fiction per word on a sale, an actual traditional style sale. But okay, that's just a long aside, but it was just so interesting that I was looking at that Twitter fiction this morning, digging into the archives, looking at what I wrote and submitted and going, this one's not too bad. And anyways, the point of this is Greta's Twitter pitch logline. And so what I love about that and short fiction, the whole idea of that 140 characters, is there's an incredible value, I believe, of having to force that creative energy into specific guidelines or restrictions. I love that sort of challenge, and Greta mentions that, and I just wanted to reiterate that value. Try to do your pitch in 140 characters. See if you can distill it to something as powerful as that. It worked really well for her, obviously, but I just I love that. So that's another sort of and I know this isn't a craft podcast, but I'm always looking for ways that I can better my craft. And again, it's craft. That's the craft of marketing, right? Looking at a log line and stuff like that. So that's just something, if you wanted to give it a try, you may want to consider. Of course, back in the day, Twitter was limited to 140 characters. Now it's not. But that was quite a fun challenge, and I would invite you to look at your own log lines or your own teasers or whatever for any of your projects and see if you could do it as a Twitter pitch, see if that would work. And I'm talking the old Twitter pitch, back when it was Twitter, not X. Anyways, so those are my reflections. I hope you enjoyed the reflections. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Wonderful interview. If you want more of Megan and Greta, there's a link to theauthorwheel.com and, of course, all of the courses and stuff that they have in the podcast. I'm even going to have a link to, I was lucky enough to be interviewed by them. Yay! This was in early, no, when was it? When was I? Was it in January of 2024 that I was on the Author Wheel podcast talking about overcoming self-doubt, because I have lots of it, and mastering book marketing. And it's kind of funny that they call it mastering book marketing, because I do not consider myself a master. Oh my God, there's the self-doubt. They go hand in hand. Anyways, it was a lot of fun chatting with them. I'm looking for an excuse to chat with them again. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed that interview and the reflections. Until next week, and until next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you, dear listener, great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.